Hi, this is Professor Innes here, and we are now, after our spring break, going to discuss Plato. Now, Plato is part of our discussion on metaphysics, and again, we're still dealing with that thing called um, elusive matter. It's not matter, but it's those things which are elusive, we can't see, we can't touch, but nonetheless are very important for us. So, here we're talking about these things called universals. They're intangible, we can't see them, we can't touch them, but they're quite necessary for our everyday dealing with physical matter, namely particulars. So, for example, if we are going to categorize something, we've got to say this categorization is a sensible categorization. So, therefore, if we say that chairs of any type are going to be put into that category, then we've got to have a consideration of what is essential for a chair to be put into that category. So we say to ourselves, I will put this chair into that category because it has those particular essentials. So therefore, that's a sensible categorization. Now, thereafterwards, we think to ourselves, up to this point it's pretty straightforward, but thereafterwards we say, how is it we put these things into these categories? Is it the case that these categories exist independent of my thinking, which is Plato's argument, which we're going to discuss today, or is it the next one, which is going to be John Locke, we're going to do next week, who's going to say they're concepts, namely it's down to our thinking, it's down to our view of what is the purpose of a categorization. So keep that in mind, that these universals and the understanding of universals in particular are controversial. We're not agreed upon them, that's the problem. So where do these universals reside? That is the question we're asking now. We're quite aware that we categorize things. We do that all the time. We even make, silly categorizations, massive generalizations, biased generalizations, things like that. But the case is there afterwards, where do they reside? Are they independent reality, as Plato is going to discuss right now, or next week when John Locke discusses them as concepts? So that's the question we've got at the moment. So go straight on to Plato. You're going to watch a couple of videos here about his notion of reality. It's often called reality. Now, reality is not something we live in. Reality is something independent of us. So if we say we're talking about something that's real, we're saying that it is something which exists independent of us, we refer to nonetheless because we wish to have a real understanding of the world. So, for example, if I wish to have a real notion of aesthetics, therefore an example would be art, then I'm going to think about art in the abstract. I'm not going to think about particular pieces of art or particular pieces in a given period of time. I'm going to think about art in its pure abstraction and consider that to be real art. Now, there's no proof that we've ever actually experienced this real art. All we've had is this constant flow through history of flux. Now, we'd hope that sometimes somebody's got it right. I guess that's when we start to call these things masterpieces, or basically a masterpiece. So it would be the case that Venus de Milo is a masterpiece. Constable's painting of Winchester Cathedral, another masterpiece, and so forth and so on. So in that way, we say, they could be examples, but we're not quite sure of that. We hope that somebody's going to get it right once in a while. And we say, this is a representation of the real form of the real thing, rather than our pathetic attempt to get it right and pathetic failure all the time. The one I often use as the most probable failure of all time would be interior design therefore how we decorate the inside of houses, and we try to get it right, and the 1970s was a time when we got it wrong. And if you look on the internet for interior design of houses in the 1970s, we might say something went drastically wrong there. Maybe we had a kitsch phase and we enjoyed it while it lasted, but it wasn't the real thing. And we certainly were glad when it was over. So we could do that, not too much, well, tongue-in-cheek maybe to a certain extent, but I just don't think anybody's going to copy 1970s interior design while being serious. So we say to ourselves, something's gone wrong there. That's the point of flux. That was our copy of the real thing, our attempt, but obviously a very poor attempt. So that's the consideration about universals, namely things which exist independent of us, according to Plato, which he calls forms. Another example would be, I would think here, of when we categorize things would be that of mammals. Now, this is where I start to think, again, is the categorization of what is a mammal a peculiar one which Plato won't accept? I don't know. That's the question we're asking. So to be a mammal, you've got to have these certain essential qualities, such as warm-blooded, it gives birth to live young, has a backbone, and some other essential characteristics. And then you're a mammal. But thereafter, I think, who is a mammal? Which creatures are considered to be a mammal? And we've got, the cases: the cat, the dolphin, the wolf, and human beings. So normally I don't put myself in a category of a cat, and in fact, I'd be quite happy to never be in that category whatsoever. But somehow I'm now in that category, and I'm asking questions: is therefore a correct universal? Is this something that human beings have made? And as far as Plato is concerned, it could be a very peculiar view of universals which we're going to reject. He might say that. I'm not saying he would, but considering the hodgepodge collection of these particulars, I might say here that somebody has gone out of their way to pick these particulars, particular essentials, I should say, and therefore create this universal, which Plato will reject. That's the questions we could ask. Again, we're not necessarily rejecting it, we're just saying here it sounds a bit strange. I'm uneasy with this universal. So hopefully we understand what we mean by these universals and how they work. You're going to watch the cave video and do the reading on Plato's cave as well. And it is the case that we've got these individuals who make up the elite. They're the most intelligent, and they're the ones who understand these universals. They can ask these questions. You're doing philosophy, you're now participating in this elite field of asking these questions. So it will be the case here that after this course, you will be able to think about what are the notions of justice. You won't necessarily come up with a definition of what is justice, but considering we have a legal system which is, definitely not at the stage of perfection, and definitely not something Plato would consider to be perfect by any means. It's definitely in the world of flux. You can therefore criticize the present legal judicial system as being something which is somewhat haphazard and maybe arbitrary in nature. So you can do this. It's what the rulers are supposed to do. It's what the elite, the philosopher kings, are supposed to do. Look around and see what's wrong, what fits into this category and what does not. So therefore, if you're talking about justice, then you think about what fits into the category of justice and what does not fit into the category of justice. You make those decisions, and there again, they're the people who are in charge. They're the ones who make the decisions. So you're going to see that in the allegory of the cave, and you're going to consider who are those in charge and who are those not in charge, who should be in charge and who shouldn't. Should the cave dwellers be in charge? You're going to see a depiction of them which may indicate that they should not be in charge. I think it's quite clearly depicted in Plato's allegory of the cave that the cave dwellers cave dwellers have a very dull and imprecise view of these universals. In fact, they don't have no view of universals at all. They just see particular objects and come up with some relationship between the two. And yeah, for us, they've got it wrong. And it's the people out on the outside of the cave who get it right. So again, we are in that position whereby those who perceive these universals, who can understand them, should be the ones in charge. And this will have implications towards politics, namely who should run the government, who should not. We're doing political philosophy at the end of this course, and we are asking those questions then as well. So keep that in mind, because again, if we're saying that somebody's got it wrong in politics, we like to have a good sound argument for why they've got it wrong. And I think after discussing Plato's allegory of the cave, we may have to shut down the whole of Congress and dismiss all members of the Senate and Congress itself. So, we'll be quite happy to do that because they're all incompetent, we might say, from after discussing Plato's allegory of the cave. That's for you to do. You decide that one. Even the political system in this country, you might say, is a two-party system. Okay, is there something wrong with that as far as a perfect form of politics? Right, so all those questions to ask. Again, we don't come up with conclusions, we just realize that there have to be problems. So keep that in mind. The main point of this discussion and next week's discussion, I'm just checking here, and the week after with George Berkeley, is discussing these universals, saying here exactly where they belong. Are they products of the mind, as Locke will say next week, or this week they're a product of something independent of the mind, and we have to use our intelligence and endeavor to understand these universals. But nonetheless, they're there, and we refer to them on a daily basis. The only problem we have is to say where they do exist. Are they correct? Do they seem to be something which we can actually discuss seriously? Okay, right, so hopefully all that made sense. Just a note before I go on the homework, I think I've basically caught up on grading this homework, and again, online grading is something which it's very difficult to keep up with. There's tons of it, and as you know, if you do an online course, you get an extra 47 hours of work to make up for the time you're not in the classroom. So that's the way it goes, and with that I get an extra 47 hours of work to grade from each student. So yeah, it's something I'm not complaining about. It's just that it takes a long time to get through. So I should be caught up maybe this weekend, but more or less I'm keeping an eye on the homework. Okay, so please let me know if you need anything. Hopefully as well the change in tactic for the journal is more helpful to you. I should be able to make a reply to those journal entries maybe tomorrow. I'll try and do that tomorrow, but hopefully it's more useful than it was before. Again, I'm trying to devise a method which is more functional. Okay, right, so I think I've said enough about universals and a few other things, so let me know if you've got any questions about Plato's forms and what they mean. And again, metaphysics, like philosophy, is complex. It's not difficult. Once you get the hang of it, you're perfectly fine. Again, keep in mind, it's not that difficult. You're thinking about these things all the time and asking those questions. Right, so let me know if you need anything, please. Okay, bye for now.